So, at these talks, you're kind of always gently implored and kind of nudged to change your perspective on things and change your behavior and look at the world in a different way. I don't want you to change at all. I think you're all wonderful and beautiful exactly as you are. Please embrace it, right? Do your thing. And in fact, I actually want you to lean into what you do as you do without changing a thing. But I want us to think about technology a little bit differently and let it work for us as opposed to us always and ever increasingly feeling like we're working for it. It's been said by someone that songs are created in exactly the shape of a wound that someone else has. The weird thing about it is we don't really know who is creating the song, who needs the wound, all these things between it. But if you think about your very favorite song and where you heard about that song, where you learned about it, for the vast majority of you, it was from a friend. It wasn't a record label. It wasn't a radio station. It wasn't any of the countless marketing or social media. It was someone else. And so we've had this horrible misallocation of value from our creators, these people who make the works, and the consumers. You have publicists and galleries, all of the people that sit between the creator and the consumer. And oftentimes what that leads to in economic terms is something known as rent seeking, sitting between something, extracting value, but not giving anything in return. And that's getting worse and worse. And I'd argue that we're at a sort of existential crisis at this point. You've got, your hobbyists as musicians, and you've got people with the last names of Jagger and Richards and a few others who are able to make a living in their music, but this entire middle layer of artists, not just musicians, but creators generally, can't. And it's bad. Think about how much music has been through this whole show, right? And how much of it has hit some of you in ways that you never expected. The theme of this is frequency. We all vibrate on kind of different frequencies. I'm going to talk about a song that's resonated with my frequency all my life. Maybe someone out there has heard it. There's a song called Pancho and Lefty. It was written by a now deceased, laconic Texan songwriter named Townes Van Zandt. He released it in 1972 to a just complete and utter, no one cared, right? But then somewhere along the way, one of his friends heard it. It just so happened that one of those friends was, Merle Haggard, right? So Merle Haggard and this other laconic Texan pot-smoking dude, Willie Nelson, made a version of it, and lots of people heard it. And they all bought the Willie record and the Merle record. And if you go to Google, there's Brother Merle, right? And many people associate him, and in fact, if you go to the inevitable source of truth, the internet, and you type in Pancho and Lefty, it says it's by Merle Haggard and Willie Nelson, like those two characters just sat around. That's not true at all. But some people did hear the name Pancho and Lefty from Merle and Willie, and maybe they researched, and maybe a handful of people actually found out that no, it's this dude Townes Van Zandt did it. But along the way, other people didn't. And then, if you go to Austin, and you should, there are at least 2 restaurants called Pancho and Lefty's, right? Now, you may very well drive from here and go down to Austin and be like, I don't know why they called it Pancho and Lefty's, right? Just eat a delicious Mexican tortilla. But someone goes, well, who's Pancho? Where's Lefty, right? And they say, no. Pancho and Lefty is the song written by Merle Haggard. That's not true at all. But some people might go, whoa, no, you got to check it out. Like this restaurant, if you like it, you'll love that song. Right? And they do that thing people do. They say, no, if you like our tacos here, you might like the music of Townes Van Zandt. I know that happens, right? So that's my beautiful girlfriend, right? And we're at a bar that's down the street from our house in Marblehead, Massachusetts. But sometimes when we walk down the street, one day walking down the street, and our neighbors are walking by, and they're walking that little dog, right? I said, oh, you got yourself a dog. And they say, yeah. I said, oh, what's the dog's name? They said, oh, the dog's name's Lefty. And I said, oh, like Pancho and Lefty, right? Because remember, I had in my wallet since I was like 15 the lyrics to Pancho and Lefty. I don't know, I just fills a wound that I have, you know? And these two dog owners, when I said, oh, like Pancho and Lefty, their faces lit up. I said, how do you know? I said, Merle Haggard. No, I said, because it's like one of the greatest songs ever written. They're like, we had no idea. We never heard of it before. And they said, but you know what we did? We went out and we listened to the song on Spotify. It's so good. And now they make me schlep my guitar over and play Pancho. You know, it's all good. But every once in a while, they'll bring little Lefty down there into the bar. That's allowed in Massachusetts, apparently. And they bring the little dog in, and everyone goes nuts for him. And then they go, oh, what's your little dog's name? And they go, Lefty. And some percentage of those people go, well, why? And they say, Merle Haggard. No, they say, there's a song by this guy, Townes Van Zandt. And they spread it. What did Lefty the dog get out of that? Right? Lefty is doing the work. Lefty the dog is exposing people to songs that might fill that wound. And so quantifying value is hard to track. Poor Lefty, he's just obliviously wandering around, you know, being Lefty. But in some way, he's spreading the word of Townes Van Zandt. Now, I certainly want to envision a world in which we're giving dogs money. I think the world, right? If we just allocated our funds to dogs and see what happens. But until that time happens, maybe there's some system in which we could take Janet and Sharon, Lefty's dog parents, and reward them with something for spreading the word. Maybe it could be some form of token, like a type of membership card that you're all familiar with. And maybe the people that own the restaurant in Austin, Texas, Pancho and Lefty's, maybe they too could get rewarded somehow when they do the work of turning people on to this great art. By our contract code, those artists are supposed to be getting paid. They're not. Even with music flowing through here. And that's not to say that TEDx or this place isn't doing everything they're supposed to do. They're paying the ASCAP and BMIs of the world. But all of those entities still operate in a modeled, not measured way. It's like some of you all, I don't know if you remember, like the gas man kind of creeping through the ferns and looking at the dial that would go around, right? And then they'd come back 6 months later, and in between they were just guessing. But now we can map human genomes. Now we can track everything. And while crypto may come and go, what have you, blockchain technology and Web3 that allows us to see human behavior, to do the things that we do, to turn people onto the songs that you love, and to be rewarded with it for doing so, not with some type of dollar figure, but by rather giving you a feeling of inclusivity, right? As I said, REM, right? Some of us are old enough to remember them. I remember wandering around my high school with like their lyrics written on my pants and everything, right? And I wanted desperately to get my hands on instrumental versions and B-sides and everything else. And REM wanted desperately to know who what I call their most passionate percentile of people are. In any system, you've got some Pareto, right, an 80-20 rule, where some small percentage of people do the work for most of them. I can promise you, in Wynwood, Pennsylvania in 1984, there weren't a lot of people ringing the bell for REM, right? But I was. But they didn't know, and I didn't know, and there was no relationship. And all that time I've been singing and talking about Pancho and Lefty. All you, I don't know, how many people are here? All of you now have at least heard about that song, and some of you will be driving home and you go, I don't know what that crazy guy was talking about, but we're going to try to tune this in. Do it! And you'll love it. And you'll think of me, right? You will. But I'll get nothing for it, right? And disappointingly, neither will Townes Van Zandt's widow. She won't, because it's not structured. So I came up with this thing, This is the nerd part. I guess I'm the TED, I'm the T, I'm the tech person, right? So I coded together this thing called Story, the song that owns itself. And what it does is you say, okay, I'm an artist, and that's artist with a capital A. You could be a mime, right? Poet, whatever. You say, well, I'm going to make some work, that beautiful thing. I'm going to make some work, but rather than give it to a gallery or to Spotify or whatever, I'm going to say, we're going to create this thing called a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. It's like a blockchain version of an LLC. And the DAO then issues out tokens when people do the things that the song wants. What does the song want? It wants to be heard, not necessarily by the most people, but by the people who care the most passionate percentage. And when you do the things that the song wants, and what does it want? It wants you to tell your friends about it. It wants you to talk about it, to blog about it, to write about it, to tweet about it, to do any of the things that we humans do naturally. Name your restaurant after it. Name your dog after it. We'll give you these tokens that then allow you to say, I'm part of this broader conversation. Our future is very much decentralized, but it's also about guilds and communities of interest coming together and supporting the art that we love and giving it back directly to the artist. So when you tell someone about a friend and you're issued tell someone about art that you love, and you're issued something that allows you to get closer to that art, everybody wins. So Willie and Merle covering towns, it created more value for the song than anything, any record label did. A restaurant calling itself Pancho and Lefty has likely done as much or more in terms of creating awareness of the song than any label or publisher. A beautiful woman in a bar holding a dog called Lefty and talking about his name and then people identifying it on social media is doing more than the industry. Right? We're going to recalibrate it. Artists who expose others' work should be rewarded, right? The Pancho restaurant is a metaphor for any orthogonal collision where value is created or derived. If Pancho were a song that owns itself, it would issue tokens to the restaurant. If Pancho were a Stowy, Pancho the dog, it would issue tokens to the beautiful woman in the bar. So where we are to date, we've got a white paper, created the technology, we put it on a blockchain, we've issued a handful of these, one from a Grammy Award-winning artist called Superposition. We did it with the great hip-hop artist Run DMC, and we're going to do thousands more of them. Where do we go? More functionality. I want this to be the way that blogs were for writers 15 years ago, right? Where you as creators can go and say, I'm going to identify my most passionate percentile of fans using these tokens, and I'm going to reward them. I want artists to make their customers understand better through just-in-time education how they can support. Right now, if your songs are streamed on Spotify, Spotify owns the relationship between your fan and the creator. That's got to change, right? We'll integrate into other emerging Web3 tools, AR, VR, AI, other media, shows that owns themselves, and then an ongoing commitment to artists having a seat at the table of creation. Because at the end of the day, art is the empathy machine, and more art equals more war. More art equals less war. Thank you very much.